Years ago, maybe 7 or 8 years ago, I was traveling, heading a communication conference. This was in some of the countries of Inter-American Division. And when I was there at the airport, sitting at the gate, waiting for my flight, I was seeing the news, the TV news there, the local station, and they were saying that a plane that was to land in that same airport I was has been hijacked. Immediately, of course, the people around me and maybe, of course, me as well, were a little concerned, you know. People start talking, hey, an airplane was hijacked. What happened? It was to land in this same airport. So with some concern, maybe some afraid, we board our flight, our next flight. When we land our destination, immediately we went into our phones, into our social networks maybe, to see what happened with that flight that they announced it was hijacked. And the story was interesting. They said all the passengers are okay. The plane already landed, and the hijacker was a Christian pastor. You know, it was this guy who think, I want to hijack this plane because I want to give a message, a very important message. Something wrong is to happen to this country very soon, he was saying, and I need to announce that message. Actually, he said, the Lord tell me to give this message. So that's why I hijacked the plane. That's interesting because he wanted to share a message that was really, really important. But the mean of communication, the channel of communication he chose to use, it was the wrong channel of communication. The interesting thing is that the message he wanted to share with the people never arrived to the destination. Because of course the people, instead of talking about the message he wanted to share, the people was talking about he as a sender of the message. They were saying, of course, this guy is so crazy. How the Lord will tell him to advise him to hijack a plane? It's completely crazy. And the main goal that he has in mind, that was to talk with the president of that country, of that nation, never become a reality. Because all people was talking about the wrong thing he did, instead of talking the message he wanted to share with the people. I understand that at this moment, the same guy it's still in prison. It's on the jail, of course. That was a crazy thing to do. Sometimes we do things like that. And Ellen G. White says, you will see the text in your screen. Ellen G. White says that in the cities of today, where there is so much to attract and please, the people can be interested by no ordinary efforts. And she continues saying in the next slide, they must make use of every means that can possibly be devised for causing the truth to stand out clearly and distinctly. Now, I have a question for you. Do you think Ellen G. White is talking about this kind of weird channels of communication as the one this Christian pastor was using? I don't think so. And I think you neither think on that. So the question that I have for you now is, have you hijacked sometimes the message? I'm not talking about hijacking a plane, but my question is, have you hijacked the message? I mean, have you stopped the message at some point, or trying to use a channel which is not as effective as other, not in the way this Christian pastor did, but maybe in a different way? The next slide we are seeing in the screen is the most basic model of communication we know. It's a sender sending a message to a receiver. But this message needs to be through a channel of communication. And sometimes, we think that the channel is the most important thing than the message. In the story we just told, the guy thought that the channel was the most important thing, so that's the reason he went and hijacked an airplane. But the most important thing in all this process of communication is not the channel, is the message that we want to share with the different audiences. Maybe you are hijacking the message. My first advice on this speak is do not hijack the message. What I mean with this, I'm not talking about, as I said before, I'm not talking about to hijack an airplane. I'm saying that maybe sometimes we are hijacking the message. Maybe we are putting some barriers there, so the message is not arriving where we want to arrive. Maybe as a church pastor, as a conference president, a union president, we are in some moment to decide who is going to be the next communication director of the local church, of the conference, of the union. And that's initially when it starts the first challenge we have as a leaders. Have you think on how are the skills that this guy needs to be the communication director? Have you think what abilities he needs to have? Or a little more difficult question, have you think on all what involves the communication department and the task that this communication director needs to do? Because sometimes we just appoint someone to fill up the position which is on the church manual maybe. Or maybe we are just thinking on someone who is working maybe or managing the PA system at the local church, or to think on the guy who works in a local newspaper, or maybe sometimes we not even think on all the duties the communication director needs to do. So that's the first challenge. Do not hijack the message, putting some barriers of communication in appointing someone who is not capable to do all the tasks that the communication director must do. The second advice you will see on your screens is, let's see the second screen, seek for advice. Don't work by your own. I'm talking to you, communication director of a local church. I'm talking to you, union president, conference president, who needs to decide. Seek for some advice. You're not alone. And in your local church, in your conference, you have many professional people. You may find someone who will advise you in this decision on how to make communication better. The next advice that you will see on your screen is create a team. Yes, create a team in your conference, in your church, in your union. You may find many people that may be part of a team. Even the communication director must not work alone, must not work by itself. You need to find someone who may work in corporate communication, who will advise you in corporate communication, someone who will advise you in media production, how to create some podcasts, for example, some short videos to share on your social networks and the like. Someone who will advise you in social networks, to work on Twitter, on Facebook, on Instagram, you name it. And in third place, try to find someone who will advise you in journalism, in how to write news, how to deal with media. And I'm talking about all the levels of the church, the local church, the conference, the union. And the last advice I want to share with you in the screen is rely on professionals. Yes, we have seen that every single church has some professionals professional photographers, professional journalists, professional people who works on social media and all that means of communication. If you don't rely on those people, on those professionals, maybe you are hijacking the message. And remember, the last one is the most important thing in all this process of communication. It's not the channel of communication. It is the message. So think on that today. Don't hijack the message. The most important thing in all the process is the message, not the channel of communication. That is why today we want to share with some different professionals of communication some interesting talks. The first guest we have is Sam Neves. Sam Neves is the Assistant Director of Communication for the General Conference, and he will bring a very interesting topic about change, the concept, the vision of change. Next one will be Libna Stevens, our colleague here at the Communication Department in the Inter-American Division. She's Assistant Director of Communication here in the Inter-American Division, and he will bring this topic with you, very interesting topic about why it's important to share all what is happening in the church. Then we will have Everett Wiles. Everett is the General Manager of NCU Media Group in the Adventist University in Jamaica. So he will bring us this interesting topic and why it's important for the church to use media. And the last one will be Robert Valencia. Robert has been professor in Montemorelos University. He has a lot of experience in visual communication, and today he's bringing this topic about creativity and media. He's now working at Adventist World Radio, and I'm pretty sure that these different talks, these different sessions will be a blessing for your church. Welcome once again to Comm Sessions.
Today, we're going to talk about change, and change is never easy. Look, I've placed it in a cloud, but it shouldn't be because most people hate change, any change. The innovators think they love it, but in reality, no one does. And why is this topic important for churches? Well, it's very simple. Churches, in their essence, they are agents of change. Now, God likes change, and this is a very difficult concept to understand, because we grow up listening to the fact that God doesn't change. He's the same yesterday, today, and tomorrow. But in fact, God is constantly calling us to change. Now, yes, we are constantly trying to be more and more like Jesus. That's a constant change. Even Adam and Eve were trying to get better and better. Now, don't confuse perfection or the lack of sin with what I'm describing here. We're constantly trying to understand more of who God is, and we're trying to be the same. So let's go back a little bit. Actually, let's go back a lot. So we left the Garden of Eden, and then the world went astray. Again and again and again. And I want to pick up the story where we come to the Egyptian narrative, where the people of Israel, they are there in Egypt, and they are slaves. Now, of course, they've been slaves for a very long time, and they don't know what it's like to live a life of freedom again. And let's look at society at the time. They would sacrifice children very easily. There was no law overall. So basically, if somebody stole your sheep or your donkey, you would be absolutely in your rights to go and kill their entire family. That was it. That was normal around around the region. Now what happened is God came in and he said, an eye for an eye. This is what my people will follow. So that's one step forward. That's one process of change. Now in this, an eye for an eye meant that if I stole your donkey, you would need to give me back a donkey. Or I would be able to do the same to you. I'll kill one donkey. Now today we look at it and say, that's just ludicrous. That's not even fair. As Gandhi put it, an eye for an eye, and the whole world will go blind. Of course. But this is a step forward. God doesn't bring us from, immediately to a state of justice and perfection. No, it's one step at a time. Now this process of change goes through the entire Old Testament. And then Jesus comes and he calls us one step further. Even if you think murder or adultery, you've already committed. That's one step further. And God is constantly calling us more and more and more towards Jesus Christ, towards being like Jesus. As loving as Jesus was, as compassionate, as kind, as fair, as just. All of this is a process of change. Now, in a local church, change is particularly not welcomed. People know the rituals. They know what they're going to do week after week. And God forbid somebody tries to change that. I know. I've been a local church pastor for 11 years. And in this time, change is always difficult. Difficult for me, difficult for the congregation. But someone said, and I agree fully, resisting change is like holding your breath. If you succeed at it, you will die. So if you succeed at resisting change, it's like holding your breath. And then you die. That's it. That's the process. So we cannot just resist change. We need to help people to go through that process of change. And a local church pastor, or even a conference president or a department director within the Adventist church needs to understand some steps in this evolution of change. What things will you encounter as you try to bring your circle of influence to a better reality, to a new method, to whatever it is God put in your heart for you to do? Now, I wish I had known this many years ago. If I had known this many years ago, most of the frustration that I experienced, and it was a lot, would have been eased out. Most of the results would have been better. And so I wish I had known this back then, but I didn't. So let me show you a graph just behind me here, which will show this change process and what happens in most processes of change. Now this is known as the Kubler-Ross model, and there are many models for this. You may prefer a different one, but there isn't a graph here, okay, that you can see. This is time at the bottom, so time, and at the top on this side here, you have the change process. Okay. Now we start somewhere here, and it starts very well, and people are not aware that they need to change most of the time. The leader is not aware. Then there is a crisis. Something happens that moves you to want to change. Okay, and this is an important step. You need to build that crisis. Now there is a sentence that I heard the other week, and it's so true. People get it when they get it, and not a second sooner. People get it when they get it, and not a second sooner. So part of this is helping your leaders, helping the congregation, helping the church in your territory to understand change. And as change builds up, this is great. As the leader starts talking about the change, starts describing what will happen, the excitement goes very, very high. Okay? So at this point here, what you have is excitement. Okay, people are excited about the change. At least the first influencer. So in a local church, it would be the elders, maybe part of the board, people on the margins in the congregation, they just hear about the good things that might happen if we go through this change process. And then there is excitement. But soon after that, you come another phase, which then everything derails, okay? Then you come to here, which is denial. People start to say, yes, it's a wonderful thing, but it will never happen here. It just won't happen. You will not be able to do it here. You will not be able to implement it here. Just forget it. Denial. Not going to happen. It's fine. I know this pastor is saying this. I know that leader is saying that. I know she's commenting on this, but it's not going to happen. And then this thing, it doesn't matter what you do. It will go all the way down to a crisis that here will involve a lot of anger. Okay? There will be people angry at this point here. And this is the part that I always frustrated me the most. Because God had given me a vision. And we had gone through it. People saw it. They were excited at some point. Yes, there were a few that didn't like it. But then when it hit anger, when it hit that moment where they didn't want you there anymore, and there was some, people that started to gather, other people in the group started to grow, and that was right anger in the process. If you don't experience anger by the people that you're leading, if they're never angry about anything, it's most probably because you're not leading them in any process of change. Just adapting here and there and just managing. Managing doesn't involve anger. You have the resources, you manage the resources, and then you get results. That's not leading. That's managing, and managing can be done without anger. But leading into a new direction, leading the process of change, some people will get angry. And I don't know exactly why, but they will. Now here's the point. We, being a church, we often end here. This is where we stop the process. When it comes to here, this moment in time, we think that peace is the most important of all the values. And going through a struggle is just not worth it. So whenever there is anger, we react very oddly. We say, no, I don't want this. This is not going well. This is causing, a great process of stress and anger. We don't want it. And if you end here, that's it. This whole process would have been for nothing, and it will be very difficult to implement that change again. But notice what happens here. From this moment on, if the leader is focused on the vision that God gave him, then there is a process of listening. There is a process of actually listening. I thought I used to listen, but in reality, I didn't. You need to listen, you need to engage with the people that are mentioning different things and are calling your attention to that. If the idea is a bad idea, then stop it by all means. But if the leader believes, if people believe that this is something that could really benefit the church, then continue. Because right here, when you get to this point here, there will be some bargaining. There will be some bargaining. Some people will start to bargain. Well, it is going to happen. I can see that. So let's try and make the most of this. Let's try and create something that we can follow. Then comes the next point, which is testing. So you start, it works, you start to test, and it still works, and then accepting. Okay, now this here is when the change fully takes place and you manage to get to where you're going. So I was part of a building project for the last few years, and we went through all of these phases. There was excitement. We're going to do this. We're going to extend the sanctuary, and we're going to make it's such a much better place for the congregation. And we will have the money, and it will be wonderful. And then denial. Those that said, we don't need to do this. We should be investing in other small churches that are that need this more. And others will say, no, but this is our congregation. This was a local church in England. the denial phase. It's not going to happen. And then when they realized it is going to happen, then right anger. We can't do this. It's wrong. And so the anger throughout this process. But the senior pastor at that time, Jacques, he managed to lead this process through, and we got to bargaining. Fine. If we're going to have to do it, then we need this, that, and the other. Let's change the plans to accommodate what we really need. Bargaining. And we went through that process of bargaining. It added, I think, £500,000 to the process, just this bargaining. But then came the testing. Okay, let's start building. Let's see what happens. And then today, a year on, you'll probably visit the church and everyone will not have imagined not doing this work. Oh, I can't believe the church was like that. I'm glad we did this. And so this is the accepting. What would have happened if in the angry phase, the pastoral team decided to stop it? No, there are people that are angry. We can't continue with this. Let's just stop it. No, it's important to carry on through this process because all of these will happen. Now, some others define change into 3 different parts. You come up with an idea. First, they laugh at you. They laugh. It's a stupid idea. It will never work. Then, once it does work, then they go against you. They try their best to make it stop, to absolutely make life hell on earth for people that are trying to make the process of change. If you continue, if you survive the laughter, if you survive the persecution, then comes the 3rd phase, which is the most beautiful. It is the phase where they want to take a picture with you. Now that phase, that moment is very special because you need to understand that it's not about them and it's not about you either. There will be a time of laughter where you'll be ridiculed. There will be a time of absolute stress and struggle where they will try their best to stop you. And then if they can't stop you and the idea works, and after the process of change, then they would want a space next to you to show that they've always been there to support you. They haven't. Now this is the moment where the disciple of Jesus needs to look at this very, very precisely for what it is. Praise God that now they are supporting it. There is no point going back into the past and saying, I don't want you next to me because you never supported it. No, that's not what the disciple does. The disciple goes through and praises God that finally they understood what the vision is. If you are in the process of changing, of moving us forward, because God is always calling us to move forward. We are a movement. And in this process, my prayer for you is that you'll be able to learn to be a master of forgiveness. Because in this process of anger and all of this, some people will hurt other people. Some of this pretty badly. But we must be able to forgive and move on. Not just students of forgiveness, but masters of forgiveness. And I hope and pray that you will be able to lead your circle of influence, your church, your conference, union, wherever you find yourself, that you'll be able to lead it to the next step and the next step and the next step as Jesus commands it.
I'm sure that every one of you has made sure to document each moment, each special time of your lives or the lives of your loved ones, whether it's a graduation, whether it's a wedding, whether it's a new baby, whether it's visiting a historical site or family reunion. You make sure that you plan ahead and document what special moments are part of your life. And that's exciting. In this time, in this age, with this exploding social media, you can practically document every single one of your moves. You can type your thoughts, you can share spiritual messages, you can share up-to-date information thanks to the technological tools available today. And that brings me to what I want to talk about this morning, documenting the life of the church. where you are. Why is it important? Why is it important to share what's taking place in your church, in your territory? What are some of the unique stories? Why is it important? Because it's part of our history. It's part of who we are. And we need to make sure that we leave this record, we leave this documentation to inspire leaders, to inspire church members for the years to come, just like we would our pictures and our captured moments with our loved ones. We don't document to boast. We document to inspire others. You know, we have a great opportunity to inspire others, not only in our circle, not only in our territory or our country, or even beyond our Inter-American division. We have an opportunity to share with those outside, those in the World Church. And that's one of our goals in the communication department. We really want to share stories. We want to show transparency as an organization. We want to highlight what drives the church in Inter-America, what inspires our church members to share God and make a difference in their communities. You know, we want to make sure that we document because we want to inspire others for the years to come, like I said. So practically think about it. You are our eyes and ears where you are. You as leaders, you as communicators, you are witnesses to the wonderful things that are taking place in your territory. And you have a great opportunity, you have the power to share that. What are some of the practical ways that you can share or document what's taking place in your church, in your region? You know, an event, an activity, an inspiring moment. You can use Twitter. You can do so by tweeting. Tweeting lets you share, lets members, lets your constituency know what concerns the church has for its members, their spiritual life, their well-being. The church wants to make sure that your needs are met, physical, mental, and spiritually. So tweeting is a wonderful tool that we can show solidarity, we can share care. About a month ago, we saw a tweet from, I think it was October 6th. It was just about the time that the Hurricane Matthew was going to hit some of our Caribbean islands. And we saw a tweet with a picture, a couple of pictures, of Pastor Ted Wilson, our World Church president. And he was in a circle with the church leaders from all across the Inter-American division. They were there for annual council. And they were simply pausing to pray for the church members, for their church members' safety in Cuba, in Haiti, in the Bahamas, and all the surrounding islands that could have been affected by the hurricane. So it was wonderful to see, to be the eyes, witness that moment. And we were able to use this tweet in one of our news report about the passing of the hurricane. And so we were very thankful. This was a tweet that was shared by Orlando Ramirez. You can see on the screen. He is one of the executive secretaries of the West Venezuela Union. And he was there at the moment, and he was sharing that. And last weekend at the IAD Executive Committee meetings in El Salvador, we gave him a little token of appreciation for sharing with us, for inspiring us to be able to see what our leaders are concerned about. So we thank you so much, Pastor Ramirez, and we encourage you, other leaders, to continue tweeting. Use this practical tool available to us. It's very easy. If you don't know how to use it, find out. It's very simple. Another practical way that you can share an event or an initiative is by sharing news stories. News stories help us reaffirm our beliefs as Seventh-day Adventists. Why do we do the things that we do? Why are we so concerned about instilling Christian beliefs in our children, in our young people, in our adults? So think about how important it is when you see a possible news story in your territory, something that can be of inspiration somewhere else around the world, around Inter-America. You may say, well, I'm not a journalist, I'm not a writer, I don't know, but you can identify news, and you can lean on professionals, like Abel was mentioning earlier today. Lean on professionals. Make sure there's a person in your church that's documenting the life of the church, the activities, the community impact. We're always looking for those inspirational stories that can highlight the hope that we share, the needs that we meet in our community and within the church as well. You can identify what's newsworthy, you can see what's out there, you can see what's published around the world and in our division. So I encourage you to make sure that you share news stories so that we can make sure to inspire other people. And I wanted to give a shout out to a pastor from the North Caribbean Conference. About a year ago, he began seeing a need. He began seeing a need about sharing stories in his conference. He saw stories happening around him. So he began this e-newsletter where he featured news stories from just his surrounding islands there. Then he started to get more news around the English Caribbean islands. And so his newsletter began to grow, and he sent those news to us every month or every week. And now he's one of our contributors, our regular contributors. And actually today there's a story posted on our website, the top story, about a health expo with mental illness, focus on mental illness that took place just a few days ago. So I wanted to give a shout out to Pastor Royston Filbert. We thank you. His stories have gone to the Adventist News Network and Adventist Reviewed. In the course of probably about a year, he's submitted about 10 stories. So we thank you for your commitment. Keep it up. And we want to encourage everyone else that's working on sharing stories to make them available so everyone else can be inspired and can probably duplicate those initiatives and inspire others in their communities. Another way that we can share is taking photographs. I know that everyone pretty much can take photographs. You have your cells, you have your cameras. Practically, we've seen a lot of people share pictures of initiatives, events, and activities on Facebook, and that's another way that we can inspire other people. And just yesterday, we published a story that had a great photo feature. It was about this 6-month caravan initiative across the streets in Puerto Rico, now that the general elections in the U.S. are drawing to a close. And there were some wonderful pictures that were highlighting that activity. And we got these few pictures from Israel Rodriguez, actually. It's wrong on the slide, Israel Rodriguez. He's a contributor. He's been posting pictures of activities. He's an IT professional. He has helped us cover some pictures on even some other events that he just goes and visits on his own. So we wanted to give a shout out to him to keep it up. Wonderful pictures. There's you can see on the screen the actual piece that we published yesterday. It was if you can go back that, you can see the initiative. You can go on interamerica.org and you can find out a little bit more about that initiative that was so inspiring. So I want to challenge you to take the time to make sure that you document, that you share with others. Remember, you have a great opportunity to share the life of the church, what's happening where you are. If you don't share it, only your own little circle knows about it. No one else will hear about it. And we have a responsibility to share, to be of inspiration. If you want to know a little bit more about how to share news, about how to use different media tools, you can visit our ID Media page. It's idmedia.interamerica.org. There's some seminars, there's some wonderful tips, and there's some presentations there that you can go through. You can also, if you have any questions, you can email us at idmedia@interamerica.org.
Why is media important and relevant in ministry? Many persons have asked this question, and maybe you could understand if this question was asked 10, 15, or maybe 20 years ago. But today, in an age of technology, where media is literally at our fingertips, then the question should not be if media is relevant or important, but rather, how can I use it to effectively carry out my message? In Mark chapter 16, after Jesus' resurrection, when he appeared unto the disciples, he told them to go into all the world and preach the gospel to every creature. This charge given to all of them, in my opinion, is the basis for media ministry. He did not say go into your neighborhoods. He never said go into your town or city. He said go into all the world. When I also think about mass communication, and I think about what it means, it's pretty simple. Mass communication simply means that we are communicating a particular message to the masses. Masses being a large group of persons via a specific medium. Mass communication includes, but is not limited to, television and radio. So when I combine the two thoughts, I can think of no better way to fulfill the mandate given to the disciples by Jesus, and by extension given to us, to go into all the world. Not everyone is cut out to be an evangelist. Not everyone is cut out to stand behind a podium or stand in the pulpit and deliver a soul-stirring message. But we all can contribute our talents to the spreading of the gospel via some form of media, whether we are in front of the camera or behind the scenes. God has given us all at least one talent. Some are blessed with many talents. How are you using your talent? I knew from very early that media would have been an effective tool in spreading the gospel. It is my personal conviction that it is the tool that will penetrate the masses and reach into areas where ministers and missionaries are unable to go, especially in these last days, and especially in certain countries where evangelizing is considered a crime. When you produce a program for radio or television and it is aired, you have no idea how many individuals were able to see or hear that message. You have no idea how many lives were touched or transformed. Additionally, when these messages are then uploaded online and archived, they will be able to be accessed multiple times long after the event or program was aired. I strongly believe that we need to reconsider how we evangelize and the methods that we use, as the old way of doing things, in my opinion, are not as effective as they used to be. We are competing now with numerous other elements that distract us as individuals. We have busy work schedules, social media, family and home life. Persons are finding it more and more difficult to attend evangelistic series as they would wish. It may be difficult, even with all good intentions, after a long day at work and a heavy commute home, to leave again to attend an evangelistic series after dinner is prepared and homework for the children is complete. However, those same individuals will turn on a TV or radio to tune into the message or event being aired. Those same individuals will go online and access the archive and watch or listen at their own leisure once it is available. I had an encounter a few years ago that made me realize that we had to do things differently if we were going to remain relevant. A well-known evangelist was conducting an evangelistic series here in a popular town here in Jamaica, and I decided to stop by there one evening on my way from Kingston to my home in Mandeville. I was unfamiliar with the area, and so I called a friend of mine for directions. After receiving the directions, I proceeded to the location. I thought that given the fact that this evangelistic series had been going on for at least 3 weeks prior to my visit, and given the fact that the speaker was a well-known evangelist in Jamaica, and given the fact that numerous persons had been talking about the series, I felt that it should be pretty easy to find. Upon approaching the area where the tent was pitched, I started to look out for the telltale signs that something major was happening in the area. But all seemed quiet. I drove around but could not locate the tent. So I stopped at a gas station and asked the attendant if he knew of the big Seventh-day Adventist tent that was in the area and where I could find it. He was unaware. I went inside the gas station and asked the cashier if he had any idea where the tent was located. He too had no idea. So on my way back to the car, I called my friend and I told him that I was unable to locate the tent, that I may just navigate my way out of the area and head home. He asked me where I was located, and when I told him, he said that I was not very far from the tent, and if I had walked to the end of the street and looked down the road from the end of that street, that I would see the lights from the tent. So while I was on the phone with him, I proceeded to the end of the road and looked down that street, and just as he said, there was the tent. Several things jumped out at me immediately. One, that the tent had been there for more than 3 weeks, yet people who worked in the area had no clue where it was or what I was talking about. I'm sure that if a popular reggae artist was in the area, especially so close to that gas station, that all the persons there would have known about it. Two, was the church being effective in the area, especially with all that money that was spent on pitching that tent and putting on that series? And three, how much more effective would that series have been if a portion of the funds were channeled into media ministry? I left the tent that evening convinced that whatever I could do from that day forward to have media incorporated with ministry here in Jamaica, that I would do it. Since then, I can say that I have seen a major transformation in how these events are planned and executed. The services that we offer here at ANC Media Group have been utilized in many of the events planned, both on radio and TV. I personally have heard of persons who just by listening or watching have committed or recommitted their lives to Christ. I have also heard of persons who have called our radio station NCUFM and have told us that through the ministry and that medium that they have chosen not to end their life. These are persons we have never met, and these are persons whose life would have been totally different had it not been for the media ministry. How many more lives are being touched right now through the various mediums the church currently utilizes? How many lives are being transformed? How many persons will come to Christ simply because they were exposed to the teachings of the Bible through media ministry? Many of these individuals we will never meet. So let us continue to fulfill the mandate given to us by Jesus to go into all the world and preach. Is media relevant and important in ministry today? My answer to that question is a resounding yes. May God continue to bless each and every one of us as we use our gifts and talents in helping to spread the gospel so that the world may know of his soon coming and prepare our hearts, minds, and souls to receive him when he comes.
Are you a follower of Christ who is passionate about claiming the Great Commission in this day and age? Have you been tasked by your church or department in coordinating communication via the use of the most relevant media? Perhaps you are media savvy yourself and would like to make more effective use of these tools for sharing about Jesus with others. You see, I have this passion too. And I'd like to share some thoughts with you about how we could envision our attitude towards media and ways that we could use it to foster better relationships, to enable all who get involved, and to help our efforts transcend in ways beyond what we could have imagined. In the past few years, we've probably become familiar with a term called total member involvement. And in today's media landscape, I believe that is certainly something that can't be helped. Social media has disrupted traditional mass media in such a way that individuals and organizations, the timid and the bold alike, have tools at their disposal which allow them to have a powerful voice. However, the winds of change are strong, and technology is ever evolving, improving its effectiveness, expanding its reach. And with that, it becomes imperative to know the dynamics of such changes so we can prepare our content accordingly. Something that helps tremendously is taking the time to analyze the data. If we are to produce through media effectively, we must know which media is effective for which intended audience. It behooves us to know if the media through which our content is published is as flexible and adaptable as it should be. Sometimes the channels through which we publish give us that information through analytics, but at other times we may look up data sets that may be publicly available to discover what the conditions are for the potential audiences around us. For example, what is the degree of homelessness or substance addictions or family violence around our church's territory? Look up infographics, reports, or surveys about this in your local newspapers, public offices, or universities. Another aspect to keep in mind when producing media content in today's age is a high level of indexability. That means search friendliness and accessibility. That means when we produce a video, for instance, we don't just think about adding the appropriate metadata, but also consider including transcripts, captions, and subtitles in various languages. This not only helps potential viewers with disabilities, but also those in contexts where they may need to consume that media in silence. It may also allow people to find our content because of a word that they may have heard in the script, in the transcript. And as the Internet of Things evolves, as well as machine learning and conversational AI, having as much data as possible for each piece of our media makes it relevant that much longer. Collaboration-friendly media is a term that sometimes doesn't score too highly when thinking about the life of a content once it's been published. Often we just push it until something is published and then leave it at that. It would be wonderful to produce in a way that enables others to build upon our content and connect with their communities. This can be something as simple as licensing your photos, audios, and videos under a Creative Commons license, or maybe even selling it on stock libraries. Our brothers in Norway have developed a very interesting shared library of photos, which they have named Atoms. And Inter-American Division has amassed a very impressive photo library on Flickr, and they include location and date, but virtually none of the photos have information about the names of persons featured, and they reserve all the rights. They would be many times more useful and collaborative if they would modify those two things. With highly integrated communication tools like Adobe Stock and Adobe Creative Cloud, could it perhaps be worth it to also publish Christ-centric photos there too? Is our content mobile-friendly, mobile-compatible, or mobile-first? Last year, mobile overtook the desktop for internet usage, and this year it has taken over media consumption. What are our videos and websites mobile-friendly? I think we stand to take action in many creative ways. At the local church level, we can work on recruiting savvy members who can help us make the most of our media. And also by launching deliberate activities that are specific to certain media consumption, such as Twitter or Instagram or Snapchat. And at the conference level, we could launch training workshops and promote collaboration amongst churches. At the division level, I would recommend investing in developing systems, frameworks, which allow us to foster collaboration amongst interested communicators who want to maximize their efforts. I invite you to look up Adventist.io as one example of such a thing, of such a tool. It is my hope that these brief ideas can help spur some dialogue and perhaps in making some wise decisions in your territory. God bless you.